Alright guys, so I'm going to go ahead and go through this chapter 18 worksheet that I handed out in class this week. If you don't happen to have it anymore, I will upload the blanks to Canvas along with this video. And then I'll make a separate video for maintenance fluids that you can go over with again if in class I went a little too fast, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Your physician orders medication to be given 115 micrograms per kilogram per day. Your patient weighs 110 pounds. How many micrograms should your patient receive, right? So whenever you see something that's written like as like micrograms, grams, milliliters, whatever per kilogram, if it helps you, you can try and think of it as like 150 micrograms is for 1 kilogram, right? So if you're trying to figure out how many micrograms you're gonna give to this patient who weighs 110 pounds, you first figure out what that is in kilos. So 110 you divide by 2.2 and it's 50, right? So I'm gonna go back over here and I'm gonna say this patient is 50 kilos, right? So now how many micrograms would be required for 50 kilograms, right? We know it's 150 for 1, right? So then to figure out how many it is for 50 kilograms, we just multiply 150 by 50. And you get 7,500. Okay? All right. Number 2, your physician orders medication to be given 800 micrograms IV every 6 hours. Patient weighs 125 pounds. How many milligrams are ordered for the patient per day? And how many milligrams will you give per dose? Okay. So let's break this down. I'm just going to start with my conversions, right? So this is micrograms, right? And I'm asking for milligrams here and here, right? So, how many milligrams is 800 micrograms, right? So I'm going to convert real quick on the side here. Oh, that's backwards. All right, so from your conversion sheet, a milligram is 1,000 micrograms. Right? So this is 800 divided by 1,000, which is 0.8. So I'm going to delete this so I have some space here. So I know that this is 0.8 milligrams. Okay? Now let's do the weight real quick. Actually, we don't even need the weight because nothing here is weight-based. So you can just ignore this. Okay? Now, if you recall, right, every 6 hours, right, Q6 is equal to 4 doses, right? Because one day, right, one day is 24 hours, right? So if you do 24 hours divided by 6, you get 4. So that's how we know that it's 4 doses. Also in the book, I don't remember which page. I'll probably just put it in the announcement. In the book, there's a table that says, Q1 hour is 24 doses. Q2 is like 12 doses, and it keeps going, right? So if like this way doesn't help you figure it out, you might just need to memorize that table. Okay. All right. So how many milligrams are we doing for the patient per day? So we already figured out, right, that it's 0.8 milligrams every 6 hours, right? Which is 4 doses. Right? So then 0.8 times 4 is 3.2 milligrams, right, per day. And how many milligrams will you give per dose? Well, we already know that because we already converted our micrograms, and it's 0.8. Right? 0.8 milligrams per dose. Okay. All right, 3. So the physician orders medication to be given 10 milligrams per kilogram per day. The patient weighs 35 pounds. How many milligrams should your patient receive per day? Okay, so as I did with number 1, right, basically 10 milligrams, right, is for 1 kilogram, right? So then if our patient is 35, right, 35 divided by 2.2, we're going to figure out their weight in kilograms first. So I got 15.9, right? 15.9, right? So if I'm going to figure out how many milligrams it is, I have to multiply the 10 by the 15.9. So 159, right? And since this is already, right, per day, and it's asking for per day, the answer is just 159 milligrams. Okay. Number 4, the physician orders medication to be given 65 milligrams by mouth every day. Your patient weighs 20 pounds. How many milligrams are ordered for your patient per day? 65. There's no math here. It's a trick question, right? I gave you a weight to make you think that you're going to have to convert something, right? But your order is just 65 milligrams by mouth every day, right? There's nothing that says, oh, it's per kilogram or, per whatever. So the answer is just in the question, it's 65. Okay. Number 5, physician orders medication to be given 200 milligrams every 6 hours. Your patient weighs 65 pounds. How many milligrams are ordered for your patient per day? And how many milligrams will you give per dose? So again, right, I give you a weight, but there's nothing that's weight-based, so you can ignore this, right? How many milligrams will you give per dose? Well, it's right here in the question. You're giving 200, right? Now, how many milligrams are ordered for your patient per day? So remember, every 6 hours is equal to 4 doses, right? So if it's 200 per dose, we do 200 times 4, which is 800. And that's how many milligrams they're going to get per day. Okay. Number 6. Physician orders medication to be given 225 milligrams by mouth TID, meaning 3 times a day. Your safe dosage range is 30 to 50 milligrams per kilogram per day. Patient's weight is 45 pounds. Calculate the patient's weight in kilograms and round your answer to the nearest tenth. Then use the weight in kilograms to calculate the maximum and minimum safe dose for the patient per day. All right. So let's do exactly as the instructions say. We'll start with the weight. So 45 pounds divided by 2.2. So my calculator is saying it's 20.4545, right? And keeps going, right? So if I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, it's going to be 20.5. Okay? Because the 10th place is right here. It's the first one after the period. So that's the 10th place, right? Now you have to look at the number next to it. So this 5, right? If it's 5 or above, then this number goes up by 1, right? So 20.5. If this 5 was a 4 or less, then the answer would just be 20.4. Okay? All right, so we have our weight. It's 20.5. Now we have to use it to calculate the maximum and minimum safe dose for the patient per day, right? Per day. Which is easy because our dose range is already given to us, in a per day format, right? So we do as we have been, right? 30 is our minimum, right? And I have to multiply it by my weight. And then 50 is my maximum. And I also multiply it by the same weight to get my range. So 30 times 20.5 is 615. And then 50 times 20.5 is 1,025. Right? So that's my minimum and maximum safe dose for this patient based on their weight for the whole day, right? So the minimum that they have to get is 615 milligrams in a day, and the maximum they can have is 1,025 milligrams in a day. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do number 7. So the physician orders medication to be given 175 milligrams IV every 4 hours. Your safe dose range is 25 to 65 milligrams per kilogram per day. Patient's weight is 85. Calculate the patient's weight in kilograms and round your answer to the nearest tenth. Then use the weight in kilos to calculate the maximum and minimum safe dose for this patient per day, right? All right, so again, 85 divided by 2.2. I get, on my calculator, 38.6363, right? And it keeps going. So then when I round to the nearest tenth, I'm going to call it 38.6, right? Because here's my 10th place, and then the number next to it is a 4 or less, right? So then the 6 doesn't become a 7, it just stays a 6. So it's 38.6 kilograms, right? And now we just multiply by the dosage range that we were given, right? So 25 times 38.6 will be my minimum, and then 65 times 38.6 will be my maximum. All right, let's math that out. I get 965 here. And then 2,509 here. Okay. So that's my minimum they can have per day, right? Technically milligrams, but I'm not focusing on that right now. And the max they can have is 2,500 milligrams per day. Okay, let's try another one. All right, so without reading the whole thing, I already know that this is what I need. I need my weight, and then I have to make sure I'm reading what it's actually asking, right? So we're still doing maximum and minimum safe dose per day. So 20 pounds, I'm gonna divide by 2.2. And get 90909, right? Keeps going. So here's my 10th place, right? This number next to it is a 5 or above. So this will be 9.1 kilograms. I have my dose range, so it'll be 5 times 9.1, and then 8 times 9.1. Okay, so it looks like my minimum safe dose is 45.5 milligrams, and my maximum safe dose for this patient is 72.8 milligrams. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So these, I think, next 3 questions, right? Very similar. They look very similar, right? But be careful when you're reading, because now we're going to do maximum and minimum safe dose per dose, right? Not per day, but per dose. But the range that I give you is still listed as per day. So we're going to have to do some extra math here to figure out how we get it per dose. But let's start off as we do, right? Here's my weight, 65 pounds. We're going to divide by 2.2. Got 29.5454, right? It keeps going. Here's my 10th place. Number next to it is a 4, right? So this just stays as 29.5 kilograms. Okay. Now let's do as we were doing before. So I have my range. So it's 35. And then I'm going to multiply by my weight. And then 75. And I multiply by my weight. Let me do that real quick. Okay. So this is what I got, right? And it's still the milligrams per day, right? We haven't gotten to doing doses yet, right? So this is the minimum and maximum they can do per day, right? So how do we figure it out per dose? Well, we have to look back to our order, right? And we look and see that the physician wants us to give this medication every 6 hours, right? And we know that every 6 hours is equal to 4 doses, right? So if this is the minimum for that they can have per day, right? The minimum and maximum they can have per day, right? To figure out what they can do per dose, we will just divide by the 4, right? So I'm going to do it down here. So 1032.5 divided by 4, and then 2212.5 also gets divided by 4. So So 258.125 is what my calculator put it. We'll leave it like that for right now. 2212. Okay. All right, so now this is per dose. Okay. Let's try another one. All right. So very similar question. Physician orders medication to be given 200 milligrams every 6 hours. Safe dose range is 35 to 75 milligrams per kilogram per day. Patient weighs 65, and we have to figure out the maximum and minimum dose for each dose. So let's start with 65 divided by 2.2, right? Figure out our weight in kilos. So I got 29.5454, right? So here's my 10th place. So when I round to my nearest 10th, it'll just be 29.5 kilos. Okay. Here's my range again. Oh, like that. So 35 times 29.5. And then 75 times 29.5. So 1,032.5. And 2212. That is the same thing. Okay. Oh, well, I'll just keep going with it. Okay. So, right over here, we figured out our milligrams per day for this patient based on their weight, right? So, every 6 hours, right, we know is 4 doses. So, if we're looking to figure out our maximum and minimum per dose, then we take our maximum and minimum per day and divide it to the 4 doses, right? So 1032.5 divided by 4, and then 2212.5 divided by 4. So 258.125 and 2212.5 divided by 4, 553.125. Let's see, did I get it right twice? Okay, I did. So yeah, and then if you're wondering about, rounding for the test, in this particular case, I'm not looking for like perfect rounding except for the weight, because if you round the weight wrong, then your whole thing will be wrong. But like your very final answer, so like this, if you leave it as 0.125, that's fine. If you leave it as 0.13, that's also fine. If you leave it as 0.1, that's also fine. If you leave it as 0.12, that's technically wrong. Okay. All right, let's do 11. It has different numbers. So physician orders something 225 milligrams by mouth TID, right? So TID, as we know, is 3 times per day, right? And you're like, well, okay, but how do I figure out what it is, per hour or whatever? So if you're inclined to, if it helps you, all you do, right, if it's 24 hours, right, and you're doing it 3 times per day, you divide by 3, right? And so it's every 8 hours. Right? But the TID already kind of tells you that it's basically 3 doses, so you don't really need to figure out like how many hours it is. Okay. All right. So as we do, we start with the weight, right? 45 divided by 2.2, right? Here's that weight. And my calculator is telling me it's 20.4545. So when I round it, it'll be 20.5. Right? Here's my dose range. So we'll do 30 times 20.5 and then 50 times 20.5. Right? Let's figure that out real quick. Okay. And again, this is milligrams per day that we figured out, right? So we have an extra step here because we're trying to figure out what it is per dose, right? We already know it's TID, meaning 3 times a day, so 3 doses, right? So then we'll take the 615 and divide by 3, and the 1025 and divide by 3. So I get 205 here. And then 341.666, right? It keeps going. So we'll just call it 341.7. Okay. And so those are your maximums and minimums, milligrams per dose for this patient based on their weight. Okay. I think that's the end of this worksheet. So I hope this helps. As far as the actual quiz goes, like I said in the class, I do write it myself, so it will basically probably be these exact problems, just with different numbers. Hopefully I remember to change all of these numbers, unlike I did with this worksheet. And then usually to kind of maximize your points on Canvas, there'll be like a separate area where you put what you got for your weight, where you put a separate area for like your minimum and your maximum, right? So that like each entry will count to kind of like maximize how many points you can get per question, rather than the question being like all or nothing because you rounded your weight at the beginning and then the whole thing is off then. Okay. All right, yeah, like I said, I hope this helps. I'm recording the video about maintenance fluids separately, and it will follow this one.